Hello, my name is Robert W. Morgan. As the continuing director of the American Yeti Expeditions, I am very pleased to be your host for this series of unique and intriguing recordings that are brought to you by the Talisman Media Group. As your host, may I personally invite you to help me solve a fascinating mystery. Do the giant forest people we call Bigfoot or Sasquatch really exist? For those among you who are healthy skeptics, I ask that you keep in mind that only a single report from any source needs to be accurate to make this the most compelling discovery in recorded history. And yet, despite thousands of reports from around the world, scientists in general have refused to accept these incredible beings as fact and not fantasy. Over the course of this tape, I will explain exactly what you can do to help bring this discovery about without either capturing or killing or harming these gentle giants in any way. Using my personally developed and heretofore confidential methods of passive contact, violence will never be necessary.
And I'm Steve Jones. I've been an avid outdoorsman all my life, and I host a fairly popular weekly television show for my fellow outdoorsmen of northeastern Ohio. I first met Robert W. Morgan when he was a guest on my show. And quite honestly, while I never disbelieved the stories I'd heard about Bigfoot, I wasn't totally convinced. That is, until I met this man. He didn't just convince me by talking. He showed me one of these giants.
My own first sighting of a forest giant took place in the state of Washington in 1957, and I have had literally dozens of encounters since then. However, my most recent sighting was in southern Ohio in the fall of 1995. What I saw there was a bipedal hominid that was not merely a giant hairy ape. What I saw was a giant hairy person. While my research has taken me as far away as Russia and the Caucasus Mountains of the Republic of Georgia, most of my work has been concentrated among the mountains of the American Pacific Northwest, the deserts of Arizona and New Mexico, the Florida Everglades, and, most recently, among the hardwood forests of southern Ohio and western Pennsylvania.
And I can personally look anyone, and this includes skeptical scientists with credentials a mile long. I can look them straight in the eye and honestly tell them that I have personally seen a living forest giant, and it was no fake. Now, to make this very special recording for those who wish to become new observers of the giant people, Robert and I have returned to the banks of a secluded lake in southern Ohio, where my own life was dramatically changed on the night of August 30th, 1992.
What made Steve's encounter unique is that it was not accidental. It came about after an entire year of careful conditioning of both him and that one Bigfoot who finally and deliberately came in close enough to be seen.
What you'll be learning over the course of this recording will probably sound a little bit strange at first. Don't feel badly. It sounded that way to me too. Listen, it really was worth all the time and effort it took to get that sighting. Believe me, it gave me the most incredible adventure of my entire life. And who knows, folks, perhaps what you learned from sharing our experience on this tape will lead you to your own experience of a lifetime. Maybe you'll come face to face with a forest giant person all on your own.
And now, may Steve and I welcome each of you to join us among that wonderfully inquisitive breed of human beings who truly want to know what or who the forest giant people really are, where they came from, what they eat, how they live, and why they just passed through Aunt Polly's woods. She saw them, but no one at her beauty shop wants to believe her. Well, Steve, the sun's almost down and the moon hasn't come out yet. It's time to get in the woods.
Shouldn't we put this off until a better night?
Are you kidding? This is perfect. Rotten weather always works to our advantage because it drives fakers back into the local bars, and all the noise of the wind and the rain allows the Bigfoot to feel they can move in closer to us without being heard. Hand me my day pack, will you? Thanks.
Okay, for the city person who needs to know exactly what you're talking about, can you tell us what should go into a good day pack?
Always think safety. I usually carry a well-stocked backpack with everything I need for a week's stay, but since you and I are going out just for the night, my day pack only has a flashlight with a set of fresh batteries, a whistle, some waterproof matches, some bug spray, a first aid kit, and a thermos of hot espresso. Oh, don't forget a camera with fresh film. Maybe the scientists won't believe it, but you might get a great picture for your diary.
Yeah, but since I'm scared of the dark, Morgan, I like to take along 2 flashlights, one mini type and one big 9-volter. I use the small one to light the path, but I save the big one for emergencies. And I like to toss in a small bag of trail mix. Keeps my energy up.
I used to use trail mix for snacks, you know, but then I found this new product that gives me everything I need to keep sharp for hours longer than usual. It's the meal replacement bars by Enviant International. With them, Steve, I am never hungry, and I have all the energy I need to hike all day and still stay awake for hours at night. Meal replacement bars from Enviant, I definitely recommend them. As you might suspect from the sound of that storm over there, you should also carry along a rain jacket or maybe a long poncho just in case. Oh yeah, and I always carry or roll a brightly colored plastic tape and a waterproof pen.
What's those for?
Well, I put my initials and the date on each strand of tape that I use to mark my trail. That way, if I get lost or injured, anyone looking for me will at least know when I passed by.
Okay, next question. How do you find the best place for an encounter? What makes you choose one spot over another?
Everything begins in the library. All new observers should begin collecting all the local reports they can for at least 50 to 100 years back. And don't overlook the legends of the local Indian tribes. They can be extremely revealing. Taken all together, this homework will answer what should be your very first question. Did the giants ever live in the area you wish to research? The second most important thing to do is to take a hard look at the ecology of that same area to see if it has changed much since the time of the early settlers. For instance, are there deer or elk or bear still living there? Are there still lots of fish in the streams? And this is another question you must answer. Could the ecology of today maintain a hominid life form that is omnivorous? Keep in mind that the forest giants are not primary carnivores. I've concluded their diet contains a wide variety of greenery and roots, somewhat like Ursus americanus, the black bear. Here's a good rule of thumb. If a black bear could live in your area, then so could the Bigfoot. It's as simple as that. As for taking any report seriously, I think it's crucial to stay away from stories about monsters attacking people or doing anything that sounds bizarre. In my experience, the most reliable reports come from people who have nothing to gain, who do not seek notoriety, and they usually mention catching only a glimpse or two of the Bigfoot. Even then, I am cautious to the extreme.
But how many of those stories can you really trust?
Look, Steve, perfectly honest and sincere people are often mistaken about what they think they see. But to save a lot of time, I use a pretty drastic formula that accepts only about 1% of the reports as accurate, while 49% are honest mistakes. The other 50% are probably fabrications.
How do you tell the difference?
Oh, I'd get a PhD in psychology if I could provide an absolute formula to that one. These forest giants simply do not leave easy clues to their existence. And if anyone starts showing me 1 or 2 super clear tracks, or if they lead me to some handy-dandy hair draped across a fence or a bush, I don't walk away. I run. You would be wasting your time.
So how do you handle people who like to fake things on you?
I insulate myself from these jokers by practicing total secrecy about where I work and what I do. Instead, I've chosen to do my own background research, find my own tracks, hear my own sounds, and find all my own clues. If you work alone or with 1 or 2 other persons who share your goals, your chances of a real encounter are greatly increased. I've done this since 1975, and those Bigfoot researchers who have developed an almost gang mentality get pretty uptight with that.
Yeah, I know from my own experience working with you that lots of those so-called Bigfoot researchers in Ohio wasted an awful lot of time following us around, yelling and blowing their horns and trying to spoil things.
It's unfortunate but true that there are a lot of jealous people out there who will try to make a fool out of those who dare to rise above the norm. In any case, I suggest that our new observers try parking their cars at least a mile away from their actual study area, and then either hike or ride a bicycle to where they really intend to enter the bush.
I know 9 out of 10 listeners out there want to know the answer to this question. Robert, Everyone's seen all these movies of big hairy monsters who tear things up and all that. But are the forest giants really dangerous? I mean, should people be afraid of them?
Oh, not at all. In all my years of field research, and much of it was done with my daughter Ricky from the time she was 8 years old, I have never been seriously threatened by a Bigfoot. Now, that doesn't mean they can't put on a mean show when they want you to leave an area. They are masters at intimidation and imitation. You'll be amazed to learn all the various animal and bird calls they use to communicate.
Then you feel safe in the woods, even though you know they're around your camp.
Look, Steve, the giants are not violent toward humans. They don't carry guns. They never steal car radios or cellular phones or sleeping bags, and they have never been known to molest a child. They aren't that human.
But I've read stories about their messing up road construction and logging equipment. Aren't those acts of violence?
Sure, but let's give them a little break here. Let's say you have a sick baby or a grandmother who needs rest, but some jerky neighbor decides to crank up his boombox anyway. After asking him politely, wouldn't you send him some message that he'd understand?
Yeah, I see what you mean. You know, I had a talk with my good friend Warren Sky of the Seneca Nation the other day, and... Hey! Did you see that? That was a rock.
Stay cool, Steve. Don't move and don't run. Okay, now, very deliberately, I'm going to turn my back to where that rock probably came from. Hey, don't go looking all around, okay? You'll just make them hide better. Just play it cool till we get our bearings. Think about it, Steve. That rock came from up the trail, and that means there's something up there they don't want us to see. This is a good sign.
This is not natural, Morgan. I mean, I feel real stupid not hauling butt when some giant starts throwing rocks at me.
Yeah, well, just keep your eyes on me until I make the turn. Okay, now you look. Don't stare. Just take a casual look over my shoulder and up along the trail while I watch behind us over your shoulder.
Why are we doing this?
They just made the first move, but we're taking control of this situation right now. First off, by my turning around, we can now see in all directions, right? Secondly, we might throw them off guard if we look as though we're just casually talking to each other instead of searching for them. Okay, now sneak a look up at that big clump of brush just to the right of the path, just above the biggest boulder up there. Do you see anything moving?
No. There's too many shadows up there.
Remember, Steve, these people are experts at using shadow patterns to mask their presence. Be sure you take a hard look at all the darkest patterns and pay special attention to any vertical lines that look like small tree trunks.
Morgan, why am I looking for small trees?
You aren't. You're looking for legs. Keep in mind, too, they might even hold their arms out at some strange angle to break up the form we expect to recognize as a human being. Here's another important tool in field research. Be aware that our brain is naturally programmed to look for a human pattern, so if someone presents a pattern that is not common to humans, we might pass right by that image.
That's sneaky.
That's smart. Get this data into the front part of your mind. Consider that every form you see just might not be another tree or a bush or a stump. You must make yourself so curious that you demand proof, even if there's only one iota of doubt. And don't be too lazy or too afraid to walk up and look. What's that saying? When in doubt, check it out. Let me give you one quick example of how smart these people are and how fast they can act. A timber cruiser friend of mine near Valsetts, Oregon, happened to catch sight of a young Bigfoot trotting across an old clear cut ahead of him just about the time a small airplane flew over. That Bigfoot immediately dropped down and blended in among all the old tree stumps. The moment that airplane was out of sight, he jumped up and ran for the woods. How's that for smart? Hold it, Steve. That gust of wind just might give us some good luck here. Keep your eyes glued to that boulder area because the wind is making the shadows of the leaves move, right?
Right. What am I looking for now?
Watch for any shadow that doesn't move among the shadows that are moving. Our rock thrower just might be squatting up there trying to look like part of the forest.
That means that things that look like a tree, a stump, or a bush might be our big buddy. Wait a second.
Listen,
I think I see. Whoa!
Don't turn around.
But that was behind us. That was back down toward the car.
Steve, if you're working as a team, never ever take your eyes off your assigned area. Now look back up the path and tell me if anything has changed.
It all looks about the same. No, it isn't. Something's missing. I can't tell exactly what, but something is gone.
So we've just learned that one giant might try to intimidate us into leaving, and if that doesn't work, a second giant might divert our attentions long enough for his pal to get away. In short, they faked us out.
Do you really think their thinking is that advanced?
I certainly do. Look, Steve, this is exactly why most researchers are whipped before they even set one foot in the woods. No one wants to give these giants credit for being anything but dumb animals.
But your own experience makes you believe the giants are just too human to be apes, right?
Anyone who truly knows the subject would be hard-pressed to deny their humanness because their reactions are too close to what our own would be if we were faced with their situation.
Their situation? What situation is that?
Well, let's consider how most humans react when other humans dare to have a different skin color or use a different language, eat different foods, wear different clothes, or attempt to worship our Creator differently. Most humans become quite hostile toward those differences, now don't they? Now here comes these big hairy giants who dare to live in harmony with nature and not in constant conflict with it. They don't need fire for warmth, they don't need to cook their food, and they don't bother to build houses. Guess what? Every time they come face to face with the small and hairless humans who struggle every day to eat well and sleep dry, those humans scream and grab a bloody gun.
You know, I never thought of it that way. That's a good point.
Okay, looks like the rock throwing is over. I'm going to turn back around now. You see how slowly I'm moving? Remember, Steve, don't let these giants intimidate you, but at the same time, don't challenge them either. Be a polite guest.
Yeah, I hear you, but I also felt that wind as that rock whizzed by my ear.
Hey, you'd better think about why that rock didn't hit you. They had no intention of it, that's why. Steve, not a single attack has ever been verified that wasn't provoked by a human being who used a gun before they used their brain. I promise you, if you follow the rules I set out, there's no danger whatsoever. Okay, now open your hands and spread your fingers out real wide. Now lift your arms just like I'm doing. Keep them stiff. Lift your arms until your open hands come up even with your waist. Keep your palms open and wide to the front.
We look like two scarecrows.
Yeah, maybe. But what better way do we have to show them we have no weapons of any kind? We are showing them empty hands.
Well, what would happen if we just heaved a rock back at them?
You know something? Every time I've done that, they've instantly disappeared. Remember our mission from this point on. They have announced their presence, and now we want to show them we have no weapons, but we also want to show them we're not afraid. Look, these two may be new lookouts who are visiting from another traveling family, and if that's the case, they won't recognize us or know the routine we've already developed with the local family. Okay, let your arms down and let's go on up the trail. If another rock comes zinging by, or if anything else like that happens, just stop and immediately spread your arms again, okay?
You don't mind if I duck first, do you? Or are you going to tell me that ducking is some sort of mating ritual?
You know something that's always bothered me, Steve? Come Christmas time, we all like to hang out pretty little lights and run around wishing everyone peace on earth and all that other good stuff, right? But what would happen if some forest giant family walked up to look at some of those pretty little Christmas trees with all those presents under them? They'd get shot.
That's a sad statement. But that brings me to another question. What scientific authority is there that says these giants are not just apes?
Okay, let's take a quick look at how the animal kingdom is classified. Remember, all primates are mammals that have flexible hands and feet, each having 5 digits, and that includes lemurs, monkeys, apes, and humans.
So whatever they are, the Bigfoot are primates. But why can't they just be a giant ape?
Well, in the order of primates, only humans habitually walk erect. Apes do not. Only humans have the opposing thumb and sit on their buttocks, and only humans have the helix, what we call the big toe. Apes have none of these. Furthermore, only humans have the ability of an articulated speech, and only humans bury their dead and use a marker of some sort to locate the grave, right?
So, if these giant people possess even one of these attributes, then science dictates they can't be apes.
Exactly. And from all that I've come to know about them, giants possess every single one of those attributes. Look, we either have to redefine science's criterion for what separates humans from the other primates, or we have to include the giants as either fellow human beings or, at the very least, as humanoids.
Now wait a minute, Bud. Isn't a humanoid some outer space thingamajig that looks human on the outside, but on the inside is some flesh-eating monster?
Oh, I'm sure that some science fiction writers have used humanoid in that fashion, but I'm using it to describe any one of our earliest ancestors, such as Homo erectus or Homo habilis.
Then you think the giants may be just a caveman of some sort?
I'm not qualified to make that judgment, but they are obviously survivors of something much closer to ourselves than any ape.
So why hasn't established science gotten into all this?
I'm not sure that any university is ever going to stick its neck out on something this controversial. Some of the world's oldest religions would have some tall explaining to do if it's proven that a separate human species is still running around, and members of those religions form good-sized voting blocks. Those universities risk losing substantial federal grants if they take on too many things that challenge religious dogma.
But science today is so advanced. Why can't they rise above all that?
Today's science is advanced, but compared to what? The science of 1850 was advanced when it was compared to the science of 1702. Look, every achievement and its importance is relative to what came before. Think about it. Modern science still can't tell us how South American Incas shaped massive building stones and fit them together so precisely that you can't slide even a butter knife in between them. And those Incas did not have steel tools. And our modern science still offers no real explanation for crop circles, UFOs, alien abductions, the monoliths of Stonehenge, and lots of other anomalies.
So it's all relative, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. Just consider the incredible arrogance that has always impeded the development of modern zoology. For hundreds of years, black Africans tried to tell Anglo scientists about the existence of the gorilla, but their claims were considered preposterous.
Sounds a little like what you've been up against on this Bigfoot thing.
You bet. And did you know it was only 100 years ago that we finally accepted the existence of the mountain gorilla? But the most advanced scientists of that day were wrong now, weren't they? Well, then it was the brown people of Malaysia's turn to inform science about the orangutan, the ape they called the old men of the forest because they were so human-like.
But that must have sounded like some sort of blasphemy to our Christian missionaries. You know what that'll get you?
Yeah, well, the orangs exist, though, don't they? So what do you think those same European scientists said when the Indonesians told them about a dragon that was 10 feet long and was strong enough to eat a human? Those stories were considered the end result of sucking on too many opium pipes. That is, until 1917, when the giant Komodo dragon was finally discovered, as they call it.
Yeah, like America was discovered by Columbus.
Hey, until 1934, our scientists ridiculed the Chinese because they insisted they had a black and white bear-like creature that lived only on bamboo shoots. Now we line up to see the giant pandas, don't we?
But look at our own Native American stories. How many years have they talked about the Bigfoot?
But the native peoples of the Americas have stopped telling our scientists about what they call the forest giants, the Wendigo, the Sasquatch, the Skookums, the Yamprico, Nati Iwishikachi, Oma'a, Zunaqua, the Stick Indians, or the Lost People. Do you know why? All they ever got for bucking our system of science and religion was reservation time.
Oh, before I forget, a few minutes ago you mentioned the giants might use lookouts from another family. Where did this other family come from?
Well, I know they're semi-nomadic by nature and live in small family units that visit back and forth. This evening's rock-throwing stunt tells me these are sentinels who don't recognize us from all our other visits. If these were the people who already knew us, they'd just give out some bird or animal call and then keep an eye on us.
I don't quite understand why they don't live in organized tribes like the Native Americans did. Seems it would be a lot easier to get things done.
But why should they, Steve? These people are big enough not to have too many worries. I would guess the principal enemy of the giants has always been their smaller cousins, and that's us. We've proven to be a relentless enemy of anything dares to compete with us, from those plants we call weeds to animals we call wild. If it doesn't serve us, we condemn it, no matter how important it might be to the overall ecology.
We haven't changed much over 1,000,000 years, have we?
Sure we have, pal. Through education, we have lost the excuse of ignorance for what we do. Oh, watch that rock there.
This path is getting steep. Okay, here's that boulder our rock-throwing buddy was hiding behind. You think he's still hanging out?
It's my guess they're watching us right now. Hey, Steve, look over here in this little stream. The moss has been scuffed off this stone. Look at this.
Hey, and this looks like toe marks over here in the mud. Man, I'll tell you what, something's been here for sure.
Yeah, and it's obviously heavy and soft-footed. This little stream makes a darn good escape route, doesn't it?
So why don't we follow the stream till he comes out?
Oh, no. That's absolutely the worst thing we could do. First, let's assume they're watching us right now. So let's both turn around and show them our empty hands again. Okay, that should do it. Now let's get up into that open meadow before the rain catches up to us.
Robert, I don't see how you can just walk away from these tracks like this without trying to find out where he went.
Look, my friend, the minute we begin tracking them, those sentinels would give out a yell and the whole family would hot-foot it out of here.
It's still tough, man. I mean, did you see those fresh tracks over there? That's a rush.
Sure it is. But the only reason to follow fresh tracks more than a few yards is to ensure some idiot isn't out there trying to fool you. You must keep your focus on your prime objective. We want a face-to-face encounter.
But how about if a new observer wants to make a plaster cast? You have to admit that makes one hell of a keepsake.
Well, no problem. Go ahead and make a cast if you wish, but my advice remains the same. Don't follow fresh tracks if you truly want an encounter. Now, day-old tracks, that's a different matter. Those you might follow so you can learn more about how they travel. It's those very fresh ones you want to pretend to ignore. Just pretend.
That's still a pretty strong urge to overcome, bud.
True. But instead of following fresh tracks, you should stand with your empty hands held out to the side while you speak into the woods to tell them how much you'd like to meet them. Your chances of positive results are heightened when you do that. Trust me.
Wait a second, Morgan. Are you saying that you think they understand English?
Who cares? It's the tone of your voice and your body language that carries the essence of your message, no matter what.
It would be my luck they'd send another rock zipping past me again. That storm's moving in fast.
Yeah, this might get exciting. Okay, let's hold it here a second while I check my handy-dandy map that I made waterproof. Hey, Steve, just in case we want to fire later on, why don't you break up some dry wood and station under your jacket to keep it dry?
I think we'd better be putting on our ponchos, too, don't you?
Yeah, we're about to get dumped on. Okay, look at this. We're heading for this clearing just over the crest of this hill where there's supposed to be about 20 acres of clear-cut timber. You see it?
Well, that should be isolated enough. There's not even a trail going in there.
Exactly. I make it a rule to always choose spots where hikers probably won't stumble on me, the fakers can't find me, and yet the giants can sneak up on me from all sides.
Why is that?
Oh, I try to give the big guys all the comfort factor I can. You ready? Let's go.
You hear that? What do you think?
I don't know. Let's just keep going and see what happens.
Shouldn't we stop talking so much?
Oh, on the contrary. Let them think they have us fooled. You know, Steve, one misconception that never seems to go away is that people think the Bigfoot tracks that are found are just bear tracks. I suggest that each of our new observers get a good book on animal tracks and compare a bear's track to that of a human. they'll find that the hind paws of a bear only approximate a human's foot because a bear's largest toes are found in the center of its track rather than on the inside where our big toe shows up. Besides, the heel of a bear are fairly pointed while hominids are more squarish.
That seems clear enough. So tell me about the fake tracks. What's the fastest way to tell the difference?
Here's where a new observer needs to do some serious homework. I suggest that they build an 8 to 10 foot long test bed of soft dirt or sand. Rake this until it's as smooth as a Zen garden. Then they should make a set of control footprints by walking and running through it in their bare feet. All the secrets of telling live tracks from phonies will show up through a good magnifying glass. Live toes grip and flex. Plywood fake feet are stiff.
All right, but what if some guy with big feet just stomps into the ground and then hops along to make his stride longer? How do you handle that?
Oh, that's no problem. The differences between a normal stride and someone who is faking their weight and the width of their pelvis and the length of their stride always show up in the toe-offs and the direction of the scattering of the dust and the dirt. Again, try to fake it in your own test bed and study the bloody results. Don't ever depend on someone else when you can become your own expert.
You know, Morgan, I'll bet half our new observers are thinking that every single time you give some advice, it sounds really weird at first. Then, when you explain your logic, it becomes amazingly simple.
Oh, hell, Steve, there's no mumbo-jumbo to any of this. There's just straight logic without the poisons of ego.
Well, Morgan, when someone asks you exactly why your methods work, what do you tell them?
I tell them it's largely in the preparation of self. It's attitude, intent, dedication to the goal, and damned hard work.
Well, it sure goes a long way beyond ordinary woodsmanship, that's for sure.
Well, it's partly psychological and partly philosophical, Steve. It's well defined in Sun Tzu's Art of War. First, you define your goal, and then you find the most logical way to achieve it. The first major hurdle I encountered was within myself, and the second hurdle was overcoming the prejudices of our culture. It's that stupid human arrogance again. You see, as a boy, I was taught that everything on earth was deliberately placed here solely for our convenience and amusement. I don't believe in that at all. Not anymore. I've come to respect the rights of all things to live without any danger from me.
Yeah, but we need to eat to survive. Some of those tree huggers really bother me.
Oh, really? Well, I'm on the opposite side of that fence, Steve. When I finally face our Creator, I'd rather be known as a person who hugged a tree than the person who killed it with a chainsaw. If it wasn't for those tree huggers you're talking about, those sons you're so proud of might never see a live redwood or a sequoia tree because they would all be lawn furniture. I'm old enough to remember the fight some gutsy conservationists put up to save their redwoods from extinction. As for eating to survive, the human body actually lives longer and happier on fruits and vegetables than on red meat. Who ever heard of colon cancer in a vegetarian? The bottom line for me is the taking of any life form, whether it's animal or plant, should not be the amusement we've made it.
But let me ask you something. How would you best describe your approach to this research?
Oh, hell, I just look at it as playing a sort of living chess game where no one gets hurt and nothing is lost on either side. I just keep placing myself in their path until they decide all on their own to come up and say, hi.
Well, Morgan, what do you think would happen if someone accidentally surprised a group that couldn't get away fast enough?
Oh, it's just like what happened here a few minutes ago. They'd divert your attention and then, puff, they're gone.
Okay, but what about the famous film taken by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin? You know, the one where the big female just kind of strolls away down the sand. That giant woman didn't even try to hide, and she didn't seem to be in any particular hurry either. How come?
Excellent point, Steve. There she was, a member of the most elusive creatures on Earth, and she just kind of walked away while Roger chased after her with a camera, right? Now, if they're as smart and as shy as I say they are, why didn't she run straight into the woods instead of strolling down that open beach? It looked suspicious, now didn't it?
Sure it did, and maybe that's why people thought it was all baloney.
True, but let's think about this for a second. What do mother birds do if you come too close to her chicks? She starts flopping all around the place as if she has a broken wing until
she leads you away from her chicks. I've seen pheasants, quail, and dove do that lots of times. So what?
Steve, even though Gimlin and Patterson had indeed surprised her, that giant woman instantly took control of the situation. She made those two cowboys do exactly what she wanted. Look, from the first moment of that encounter, their eyes were glued on her and they didn't even think to look into the woods. Why? Because she was putting on such a great act, that's why. She was willing to sacrifice herself even if she got shot in the back, just so the others of her group could get away.
That's quite a theory you have there, Robert.
Look, two bits of vital information corroborate my reasoning. First, when a Canadian scientist finally made it down to the site, he followed her tracks beyond where she had crossed Bluff Creek. He tracked her into some fairly thick brush and suddenly noticed that she had circled back to a point only about 100 yards above that crowd of Bigfoot hunters. Think about that, Steve. The entire time those hunters were fussing around measuring her tracks, she was just sitting up there watching them.
So why didn't any of those hunters see her?
Are you kidding? They were too busy making casts of her footprints and trying to figure out if Roger and Bob had faked anything. Besides, no one ever dreamed that she would have stuck around because, in their minds, she was just a dumb animal. Wow, that rain is hitting hard. Anyway, after hearing about the Bigfoot that had sat down and pretended to be a stump in that clear cut I told you about, it began to make sense that that big female took a risk of being shot just so her family might hide in the brush until they could slip away. That's when I asked some Native American friends to keep an eye on the background of that film instead of her. They spotted no less than 3 areas of leaf patterns that are inconsistent with the norm. It's barely a flash, but something moves beside one of those down logs. The best I can make out is that it just might be a small hand that's withdrawn from the log and down into its shadow.
Morgan, you must have one hell of an eye to catch that.
Oh, no. The Apache Kainino Kachis put me onto that idea, and it was Chataskatum of the Lumi tribe who first spotted that movement beside the tree trunk. To them, it's laughable that no scientist nor even the owner of that film has ever figured it out. And all this talk about how it's impossible for the Bigfoot to survive in the comparatively well-populated areas of Ohio and Pennsylvania is just another display of our arrogant belief in our own dominance and superiority. Any trained soldier knows that if they're caught behind enemy lines, they should only move under the cover of night. Look, Steve, if you and I were hiding behind enemy lines, what's the first rule to staying safe? It's to do everything opposite to the local inhabitants. When they sleep, you move. When they move, you retire to a safe area where you can eat, rest, or hide. It's simple logic.
So that's why the giants are usually sighted at night.
Precisely. Just put yourself into the skin of a forest giant person. Suddenly, you're 7 foot tall, you weigh 400 to 500 pounds of solid muscle, you have excellent health, and you've been trained to rest or browse all day and to move only at night. Now make your night vision and your hearing perfect. And suddenly you have an enzyme in your digestive system that allows you to eat anything that a bear can eat. In other words, you can eat raw meat, raw fish, and all kinds of raw roots and uncooked leaves and grains and grasses. This makes you perfectly adapted to live on Earth without fire. See, if you put yourself into their situation with all their strengths and weaknesses, you can begin to think the way they think.
I think that open clearing that we saw on the map is just through these bushes over here.
Yeah, this is it.
Man, it's dark up here. Can you tell where the center of that field is?
I think this is about right. Yeah, this is fine.
Okay, so now we should sit facing each other, right? I'll watch over your shoulder while you do the same for me?
Right. And whatever happens, don't overreact. Did you hear that, Steve?
I don't hear anything.
Listen.
I still don't hear anything. Should we still talk?
Talk about anything you want. Just make sure you're watching, listening, and feeling.
What I'm feeling? What's my feelings have to do with all this?
Never underestimate the workings of your unconscious mind, Steve. Other than allowing panic to take over, let your feelings in and pay close attention to them. You'll be amazed what can happen. What are you feeling just at this moment?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I could be imagining this.
Okay, close your eyes, take 6 slow and deep breaths, and tell yourself that you must only listen to reality and that you must not react emotionally. Make a concerted effort not to promote yourself into seeing or hearing or feeling anything that is not absolute reality. Now what do you feel?
Something's watching us.
Keep your eyes closed while you point to where that feeling's coming from.
I don't think that...
Stop thinking. Feel.
It's coming from 2 directions. One's behind us, and the other one is somewhere to the... Hey!
Let's both stay still for a few minutes.
Robert, do you remember that big tree we passed just a few minutes ago? The one beside the trail? It just fell over.
I know, Steve. Or was it pushed?
It's too dark to see. This is getting too spooky, man. It's getting darker by the minute. That storm is getting worse. And if that's some Bigfoot out there, he's between us and the car.